This week, we wrap an amazing first season of Star Trek Prodigy by chatting with our favorite double Janeway, Kate Mulgrew. The cast and creatives from Prodigy share their finale thoughts and feelings with us, and the many varied and adventurous episodes of the season inspired us to challenge the cast to a little game. In the words of the brave Holo Janeway, go boldly to the ready room. Hey nerds, I'm Wil Wheaton, and this is The Ready Room, your official behind-the-scenes hub for all things Star Trek universe. Of all the many emotions Star Trek has elicited from me over the years, I gotta say I was a mess watching the Prodigy Season 1 finale. High stakes, teamwork, sacrifice, it has all the best elements of Star Trek. However, if the only emotion you are feeling right now is confusion, then I'd suggest you heed this red alert! Together we're going to be processing our feelings, reliving the action, and celebrating the wins of the finale. So if you've not yet seen Season 1, Episode 20, Supernova Part 2, then I suggest you go watch ASAP before returning here. These spoilers are one thing, but finale spoilers are way worse. In the Ready Room today, I have Kate Mulgrew, the multi-talented voice of two beloved versions of Janeway and Prodigy. I'm pretty sure only the reassuring voice of Holo Janeway is going to help me get over the events of the episode. Then later, since the cast are now getting their first taste of Starfleet Academy, we thought it was time to put them to the test. So we celebrate the diverse stories of Star Trek with a pop quiz, evaluating whether they can determine if a few historical Star Trek scenarios we present to them are real or fake. But first, since I'm sure I'm not the only one curious as to what the cast and creators of Prodigy have to say about the finale and its revelations, we've got a full finale deep dive to hear all their views and where we go from here. Control room, engage.
The finale of this season, it's very dramatic and very intense.
You're just a mistake!
No!
Complete our mission. Open hails!
At the end of the first 10 episodes, you kind of think that the diviner's out of the story, and that's that. But we really wanted to dive deeper. We wanted to see a little bit of repair between him and his daughter.
Before I had a daughter, this was mine!
Gwyn's relationship with the diviner, her father, is obviously very complicated. I mean, she loves her father for better or for worse, but also recognizes that she has to defeat his plan.
No, don't answer that, Hale!
She doesn't want to destroy Starfleet, she has to save them, but she also knows that it's up to her to save Solon.
Maybe you can unify them. Do what I never could.
They get this really beautiful moment where she gets this new perspective on him.
My father made mistakes, but he was right. I need to save the Valnacod.
So by the time she makes that decision that she wants to return to Solon, I mean, really see Solon for the first time and continue his mission in a more Starfleet-y way. I mean, it's a lot of pressure. Through these joint experiences she has with the crew, I think she's finally equipped with the tools and the knowledge and the lessons where she might actually be able to achieve it.
We have to destroy the protostar. Except the protostar's auto-controls are fried. Someone will have to stay back to detonate it.
It was a very difficult decision when we, as in a writer's room, realized that we needed to destroy the protostar and hologram Janeway with it. But for the type of storytelling that my brother and I like to do, we wanted a very emotionally climactic finale for our show.
I did what I had to so that you could fulfill your potential.
It's a very Janeway thing to do. I gave a small degree of sentience to hologram Janeway in this moment because it's important to lift them up by showing them through my voice and my reactions, even as the hologram, that it is very, very difficult to say goodbye. Very, very hard to know that I am sacrificing myself.
For Dal, I think that was a very important relationship to him, but also a very important sacrifice for him to see as well. And a sort of prestige point to know that she thought he was ready to go forth.
Your potential is infinite.
What that harkens back to, it's that relationship that all parents must go through of letting your child grow up. It's a sad moment, but it's a moment that has to happen as kids get older and they find out who they are, which is what the show's about.
Do you want us to consider letting them apply to Starfleet Academy?
Including this augment?
Dal had a very big mystery around his origins. Typically, you would see he's the destined fighter for whatever the galaxy, and we wanted to go the opposite way. In essence, discovering that he's a laboratory mistake.
Dal finding out that he was an augment was really hard for him because, you know, from the very beginning, since he was orphaned on Tars Lamora, he's always been looking for sort of his origin and his place. And as, like, you know, a black person, sometimes it can feel sort of like there are these prejudices that hold you back. And, you know, being an augment and not being allowed in Starfleet was one of the sort of last prejudices of Starfleet.
You got in.
To see them break that was really inspiring to me. And also, I think, for Dal, because, you know, it does give you a place and it does give you something to be proud of.
And I absolutely love for Dal at the very final episodes, the speech by Janeway, saying that he's a living example of what Starfleet is all about. It's all of us coming together.
I don't want you to leave.
I like to watch Dal and Gwyn. I like to see them. I'm watching them with a very keen interest.
I've been rooting for Dal and Gwyn since the very beginning. I know Dal has kissed Gwen before, and she's kind of been like, whoa, what are you doing? And sort of friend-zoned him, so it's really endearing to see them grow closer together.
Gwyn teaches him responsibility and a sort of a leadership style, and I think he teaches her how to have fun, and they develop this tenderness and vulnerability, and they get closer, and it becomes this romance, which is just really sweet and touching and authentic.
You're gonna be our captain?
In a way.
The end of season 1 is a bit of a handoff. The kids have had hologram Janeway, who's a kid-friendly Janeway, and now they've graduated to an Admiral Janeway. She's no nonsense. So what you're gonna see in season 2 is you're gonna see that relationship blossom.
Janeway is, hands down, just one of my favorite characters ever. I'm so glad that she's back and that she plays such a pivotal role in this. I mean, she's a leader, she's a true leader.
It's day 72 since the Val Nakot captured the protostar.
I remember I had a little tear during the session, and the Hagemans were so lovely. She's in pursuit now to find Chakotay for many, many years, and suddenly the voice is heard. So it was emotional, and it was profound. And when I get to play those moments, it's very rewarding.
There are discussions of sending an exploratory ship.
I want to be on it.
What can we tease, but
What can
without
we
blowing
tease the
it?
fans?
In season 2, we're going to see a lot more familiar faces.
Admiral Janeway has promised them a new ship, but not the protostar. So I think that's something that fans can speculate
Something
on.
much bigger.
Gwyn is in for a journey. She is going to Solum. She's separating from the crew. She's engaging in a sort of, I guess, a long-distance relationship.
Dal, now he's gonna go from the captain of his own ship to an entire world of people who are also training to be those things and really learning his actual place in the universe. I just hope that Dal can come to terms with letting someone else lead, and if he can truly sacrifice his own ego and become a member of the team.
I love the fact that we have sort of all these different storylines going on by the end.
We promise.
We promise.
We're going to deliver the goods in season 2, and it's magical.
Well, are you coming or not?
Today I'm joined by Star Trek royalty Kate Mulgrew, who voices both the Protostar's hologram Janeway and Vice Admiral Kathryn Janeway on Star Trek Prodigy. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm delighted. Fun to talk to you, Will.
I just need to disclose to the audience that I've been having a lovely time talking with you before we even started rolling the cameras.
Exactly.
So that like deferential entry into the interview kind of already happened.
Has to be done, though. Has to be done. Anyway,
let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
We see a lot of Admiral Janeway in the back half of season 1. So practically for you as an actor, you're switching between hologram Janeway and Admiral Janeway.
I am indeed.
When you are those different characters, how do you approach it in the booth? Do you need to approach it differently in the booth?
Well, you do a lot of voice work, so you know that shift is part of the thrill.
Yeah.
My hologram is light
Yes.
certainly, than Admiral Janeway.
Yes.
Well, this is a new experience for a hologram.
She's a little more straight-laced.
Yeah.
She's also loosening up as the season unfolds.
I've noticed that.
I bet you say that to every advisory hologram.
So there's there's a scintilla of irreverence in there.
Yeah.
Her humanity is beginning to peak forward. And I think that then when I switch to Admiral Janeway, she's older.
Yes.
The voice deepens.
Yes.
The stature, the posture is more erect. But the voice is also much more organic, I think.
Good news at last. Tell Essentia to set a course. If you're out there, Chakotay, I'll find you.
She laughs.
Oh, that's very interesting.
She moves. She feels about Chakotay deeply. Do you know? Her power is urgent and immediate. Her directives are sudden and propulsive. And I think that the juxtaposition is really interesting to play.
It's really you. I mean, me. How? Dal tried to use telepathy to contact me, but we swapped neural patterns. Sounds like something Dal would do.
I love it.
When I am in the booth as an actor, I find my body language is really important in informing just sort of like where the character originates in the vocal instrument part of my body.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Same
I mean,
thing?
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Hologram Janeway has a sort of erect posture.
Mm-hmm.
She has a youth, too.
Yes.
So I don't mind playing that, if I do say so myself. And a sort of, not, happiness is not the word, but there's an excitement in Hologram Janeway about what's going on here. I mean, I do have this motley crew.
Yes.
I've got a sort of mentor.
Yes.
And then I can flip to Admiral Janeway and endow her with all that authority and sort of wisdom, and it's really fun.
Because we have been speaking so lovingly of Holo Janeway, let's take a moment and acknowledge that Holo Janeway sacrificed herself.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
This is the soul of Janeway.
Yeah.
In whatever form, in whatever iteration or reality. Janeway is always going to be noble.
Protocore is online.
There's something Greek about Janeway. I did it in Star Trek Voyager at the end. That was Endgame. Yeah. The Admiral sacrificed herself.
You've infected us with a neurolytic pathogen.
Just enough to bring chaos to order.
I think it's part of being a great captain, despite being a hologram. That is the inherent in the character of Janeway. I'm trying to give hologram Janeway a depth, although of course we know she's not sentient.
Yeah.
But she's very interesting. She has to be compelling in order to have those kids, that group, listen to her.
Yeah.
She has to have an authority and something quite original.
We found out that there's going to be more protostar-powered starships. That sort of softens the loss of the protostar a little bit, not a lot.
Right.
So I have two questions. You think that we might see Holo Janeway coming back in another form on another proto-drive-enabled ship? And a follow-up to that is entirely a personal question for my own information.
All right.
I'm speaking to you now as a fellow Star Trek alum.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an affinity for your ship above all the other ships the way I have an affinity for the Enterprise? Do you feel like...
Oh, let me start with...
Like a deeply personal connection
Let
to
me
it?
start with part two of that question. I have an absolute fidelity to Voyager Intrepid class.
Yeah.
That is my starship.
Yeah.
That is where my captaincy rooted itself. Yeah. And that's where Admiral Janeway went down. Those 7 years were intensely important. Reshaped and redefined really my life.
Yeah.
So when you talk about it, indeed, I mean, it's very hard to explain this to civilians.
It is.
That was my ship.
Yeah.
And everything that happened on that ship was because under my command, intensely important. Yeah. And the first part of your question, will we see hologram Janeway? Well, you know what we're talking about, don't you?
I mean, it's Star Trek.
At Star Trek, it's space, and the possibilities are infinite. I would hope so. May I say that and leave it at that?
You absolutely
All right.
So Hollow Janeway, clearly a mentor to the kids, absolutely.
I'm having coffee in this nebula.
I'm very happy. A love of coffee is something Janeway and Wil Wheaton share deeply.
And let us throw Mulgrew into that pot. Right.
All right, so on Voyager, Janeway was the captain of a crew made up of Starfleet and Maquis.
That's right.
So now she has a motley crew again. There is something about Janeway that makes her uniquely suited to leading kind of ragtag groups, pulling people together and inspiring and guiding them. I would love for you to talk about that.
I'm going to tell you what comes to mind immediately.
Yeah.
This is the authority of the feminine. It is the great gift of the feminine leader.
Yes.
We are endowed with, Janeway in particular, a kind of absolute compassion.
Mm-hmm.
It's immutable, and it is felt immediately by the ragtag team as well as Starfleet officers. It is who she is. It shines in her character. And I think once you have that in place, the rest is fairly easy. We can use words like command and authority, but I would say that Janeway's inherent sense of compassion, and when I look at them all, I look deeply into their eyes. I know that a relationship, an original and valuable relationship is going to evolve out of this moment. So that's another imperative for my Janeway.
I have a terrific follow-up that goes with that actually comes from a woman in my Discord. I said, I'm going to be talking to Kate Mulgrew on Friday, and I know how much you love Voyager. If you could ask Kate anything about Voyager, what would it be? And this is what she wanted me to ask.
Good.
In taking on the role of a Starfleet captain in a genre that had historically been male-centered as far as leadership roles, were there any female fictional or real-life living or historical characters you looked to for inspiration in interpreting Janeway and bringing Janeway to life?
I've been asked this question. It's a very good question.
Yeah.
And it's a very understandable question.
Yeah.
But it suggests that I had to look outward to find...
And you didn't have to do that.
I didn't.
So let me rephrase the question.
I looked inward.
How did you find her? Let's do that. You walked into,
trial by fire.
It's a big deal being a woman who's a captain of a starship, right? I don't have to tell you that.
Will, I was very carefully scrutinized.
I can
for a long time
imagine.
In a way that I'm sure the male captains were not.
Of course not. Of course they weren't.
Because a lot was riding on the success of the first female captain.
Yeah.
So I think trial by fire, and I found out what I'm made of.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I'm strong. I'm the second oldest of 8 children.
Yeah.
Oldest girl. I have all of that natural authority. But what I found out in the first season of Voyager is what I'm actually fully capable of. And that's certainly what any man is capable of. Yeah. And a kind of inherent sense of takeover.
Yeah.
I had to prove it. Yeah. So I did. And from there on, it was just it really was just a flight. The first season was hard, very hard. You know, they were a little concerned about, they were very concerned about how to present me. So there was a lot of attention to the physical. And I remember having a very good heart-to-heart with Rick Berman, whom I liked very much, and saying, if you just leave me alone. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Forget the hair. Forget the boots and the bosom and the thing and let my natural command come out. They will come, meaning the young male demographic. And that's exactly what happened. But everybody was a little trepidatious. Everybody was nervous. There was a lot of money riding on that thing.
I'm just thinking about what that must have felt like to take that home every night from the set.
Hard.
And
it never stopped, Will.
No, of course not.
I mean, I'd go home, and these were 17, 18-hour days.
I remember,
in the first season, second season, third season.
Yeah.
And I was raising 2 young children at that time, alone. And go home, and then you have to memorize your lines for the next day. Look at that script. It was very hard. Wow. very challenging, and in the end, almost inexpressibly rewarding. So what more can you ask as an actor?
Worth it. Because you are ostensibly here to talk about Prodigy, we should probably get back to that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Admiral Janeway a little bit more. She is who argues for Dal at the end.
The Federation is made up of over 150 member species. Dal's DNA includes 26 of those. So I ask you, is there a better living embodiment of what our alliance represents?
She makes the case that his genetic augmentation makes him a great representative for what Starfleet stands for. I personally love that idea.
Yeah. Quintessentially Star Trek.
It's Idic just like laid out like perfectly, right? Like
Egemans.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love it. And what a wonderful message to instill in children that our strength is in our diversity.
And it is not without poetry.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it has to come from Admiral Janeway.
It does.
To embrace all of these qualities. So that was thrilling. Yeah.
We talk about how at this point in the life cycle of Star Trek existing since the 60s, everybody who chooses to come to Star Trek now chooses Star Trek for a reason.
That's right.
And we seem to be attracting the Hagenans. We seem to be attracting
the Alex Kurtzmans of the world.
Absolutely.
Boy wonder, visionary.
Yeah, for sure.
Without him, it would be,
Yeah, and like we're so lucky.
Because the thought, the philosophy, the ideology of Star Trek is advanced.
Yeah.
And these guys have advanced minds.
Yeah.
And visions and imaginations. And let's face it, when you do something like Prodigy, it's all about the imagination.
Yeah.
Being rooted in the truth. Right? What is Hologram Janeway doing if not imparting to these kids the prime directive?
Yes.
The fundamental principles of transcending race, class, culture, all of it. Reaching out your hand. You've got to work together. That's why season 1 is so interesting. Because Dal really wants to be Spartan. He really wants to be...
He really does.
He's isolated in his ambitions, and that's fine. And, you know, Gwyn is unfortunately the recipient of the brunt force of that. But ultimately, they are all going to learn by extending their hands, their imaginations, and their goodness to one another, mostly trust.
Yeah.
This is the element. Well, you and I both know this from having done live action.
Yeah.
Trust is the key, imperative. It really is.
We're running up against the clock.
Okay.
So, without spoiling anything major, can you hint at what's in store for Admiral Janeway and the Protostar crew in the future?
I can only hint, Will.
Okay.
But I will say this.
Hint as gently as you like.
Where tension was suggested in season 1,
yes,
by virtue of the circumstances, it is realized in season 2. You will be on the edge of your seat for every single character.
All right.
And on that note,
thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. What a delight.
It's just such a privilege that you're here today, and I deeply appreciate it.
It was fun. Thanks, Will.
In this week's episode, Admiral Janeway recommends the Protostar's crew for admission into Starfleet Academy. What legendary Academy groundskeeper supported Janeway in her cadet days? Was it A. Somak, B. Boothby, C. Zahn, or D. Patterson? Don't boldly go anywhere. Stay tuned for the answer. After 56 years and over 850 episodes, there have been more than a few fun, strange, and beyond belief plot lines in Star Trek. The cast of Prodigy have been part of their fair share in season 1's 20 episodes, but as their characters embark on a new adventure with Starfleet, we figured it was time they were put to the test in deciphering between real Star Trek stories and fake ones in a game of Fact or Fiction Star Trek Edition. Check it out.
At the end of this season,
Dal, Jankum Pog, Rocktalk, and Murph finally arrive at Starfleet Academy.
Yes! Oh, yeah!
Do you think you could get admitted
and pass an entrance exam? Yes, of course. Rhetorical question.
We could not get into Starfleet. I think everybody knows that.
I guess we'll find out. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. Okay.
Captain Janeway and Tom Paris get turned into salamanders.
I'm going to say fact.
Oh, yes, we know
fact.
that. We have deeply researched that episode.
There are traces of human DNA. It's them.
Fact. I can assure you, Lots of little salamanders, which we had in the turbo lift after clasping each other.
A transporter accident turns Captain Picard and crewmates into kids.
Fact. That's totally something we would write.
Yes.
That sounds like something I want to see.
Fact. And they remained that way for the rest of the series. A mind meld gone awry causes Spock to switch bodies with his fiancée T'Pring.
I do know Spock to be a very serious person, and I also would like to watch him switch bodies with his fiancée, so I'm going to say fact.
I'm going to say fact.
Things have not returned to as they should be.
Yes, I just watched
Just
that.
watched it.
Fact.
Fantastic episode.
Fact. Good job, Brett.
The Borg Queen sings an 80s pop song at a cocktail party.
I've never seen this woman at a party.
I'm going to say fact, because my Borg Queen was Alice Krieg, and I know her to have a beautiful voice, and I know her to have a cocktail or two when she wants to.
Fiction.
I'm going to say fact just to try to get another point off of Kevin.
I'm going to say fiction. Unless she's trying to kill everybody and lure them with the 80s pop song.
It worked.
Ensign Tilly is transported to a subspace mushroom world where she meets her childhood friend, who is made of fungus.
Having a childhood friend made of fungus gives me facts.
It's me, silly.
This is, of course, a fact. This is an indisputable fact.
Fact.
Don't you remember? I'm May from junior high. I'm May from junior high. We were friends.
Captain Archer's beloved beagle pees on a tree, causing an intergalactic incident. Fiction. There are no dogs in Star Trek. Right?
I'm going to call fiction on this. We really want to watch beagles peeing in space. Not really. Anyway, where would the pee go?
I'm going to say fiction because I ain't seen a beagle. And I ain't seen a tree.
That sounds like a fact that I don't know if we would write, but that sounds like a fact.
Quark, Rom, and Nog go back in time and become the aliens who crashed in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947.
Facts. Because that's fun. And I know Star Trek, y'all like to add it in the real world so to make us believe that it's all real. So I'm going to say facts on that one.
That's a fact.
Fact. Amazing.
That's a fact.
Amazing.
I'm sure this is fact. It so absolutely sounds like something Star Trek writers would love to write, and I'm sure they had a marvelous time.
The 20th century? You mean we traveled back through time? More than 400 years!
How'd I do? They're all true? That's fun. Star Trek is fun.
In this week's episode, Admiral Janeway recommends the Protostar's crew for admission into Starfleet Academy. What legendary Academy groundskeeper supported Janeway in her cadet days? Somak, Boothby, Zahn, or Patterson? And the answer is B, Boothby. Boothby served as Starfleet Academy's groundskeeper for many years. He decorated Cadet Janeway's quarters with fresh roses during her time there, and was also a mentor to Cadet Jean-Luc Picard and Cadet Wesley Crusher. He was portrayed by legendary actor Ray Walston. We may have finished Star Trek Prodigy's inaugural season, but there's a reason it's called a continuing mission. I don't know if I have ever been as excited for a new season of Star Trek as I am for Star Trek Picard Season 3.
Breathe. Gotta remember to breathe.
And I've got an exclusive clip from the season premiere to share with you. If there was ever a time to say this, it's now. Control room, make it so.
Computer, do you hear that alert?
Yes.
Where is it?
Unable to determine location.
Thanks for your help. Computer analyze.
Communicator badge belonging to Jean-Luc Picard, Captain, USS Enterprise, stardate 4115.
Yes, but what could it possibly be receiving?
Detecting encrypted long-range transmission via a subspace frequency. It contains an uncommon codec.
Codec?
A codec is a program that compresses data.
Yes, I know what a codec is. But tell me about this one.
It requires a passcode.
Why would anyone send a coded message to a more than 20-year-old Enterprise D communicator?
Unknown.
Thank you so much for joining me in the Ready Room. 2022 was an incredible year for Star Trek. We had new episodes from 5 different series. We traveled outside the galaxy in Discovery, and we said hello to the crew of the original Enterprise on Strange New Worlds. We said farewell to our favorite mischievous adversary Q on Picard, but I also got to say hello again to the world as the Traveler, formerly known as Wesley Crusher. Lower Decks had us in stitches and took us back to Deep Space Nine, and of course, Prodigy warmed our hearts, gave us a new Starfleet crew to root for, and brought an entire new generation of fans to the Star Trek universe. Here in the Ready Room, I was just delighted and honored and so privileged and grateful to be reunited with so many members of my Star Trek family, and I promise you, there's so much more to come in 2023. I imagine a fair number of my space family is going to be right here on the couch with me. I cannot wait until next year to explore it all together and continue to talk all things Star Trek universe. Until then, I'm Wil Wheaton. Live long and prosper.